Donald Trump is sick and tired of the 3 days of his failures being put front and center in front of everyone's faces. But even before those 3 days were up, he ran over to Sean Hannity and he tried to get that a cleansing interview to shed the failure off of his face. But underneath that shedding is more failure. Because you know what? Have you ever seen his face?
But I just don't like to talk about it. That's why I agreed to do your interview. And I said, you know what, I'll do it, Sean. But that was like 2 days ago. I had no idea that. I said, Sean, are you going to ask me about what we
basically
just
say on national TV, I regret saying yes to doing this interview.
I shouldn't have done it.
Donald Trump, previously, before he had that disastrous meeting and summit with Vladimir Putin, he agreed to sit down with Sean Hannity. After he sat down with Sean Hannity, he immediately regretted this decision because he has nothing good to say because nothing good came of it. Let's watch more of this disaster.
In your press conference, you talked about a lot of things that you agreed on, and maybe one big issue you don't agree on. Are you prepared to go public with that?
No, I'd rather not. I guess somebody's going to go public with it. They'll figure it out. But no, I don't want to do that. I want to see if we can get it done. You know, it's not a done deal at all. Mm-hmm. And Ukraine has to agree. I mean, President Zelenskyy has to agree. But it's a terrible war where he's losing a lot, and both of them are. And hopefully it can get completed. That'll be a great achievement for them. Forget about me, for them. And you'll save 7,000 lives a week. That's a lot.
Is this the weave he was talking about before? How he goes through, starts on one topic and weaves back to another and makes it back again? Because they were talking about this one big issue that he doesn't want to talk about. The one big disagreement they had in this meeting that apparently threw it off the rails. He doesn't want to talk about it, though, because he's the most transparent president in U.S. history. Everything is screwed up, but he really doesn't want to talk about it. Why not, bro? That's why he didn't want to do this meeting with Sean Hannity anymore. Here's more, because pay attention to the question that Sean Hannity asks him and see if you can find an answer to it.
You said before the interview, you said, in 2 minutes, I will know. I watched very closely when you met him on the red carpet after both your planes landed. What vibe did you get in 2 minutes?
Well, I always had a great relationship with President Putin, and we would have done great things together in terms of, their land is incredible. The rare earth, the oil, gas, everything, it's incredible. It's the largest piece of land in the world as a nation by far. I think they have 11 time zones, if you can believe it. That's big stuff. But we would have done a lot of great things, but we had the Russia hoax, which stopped us from doing that. We would have done so great, but we had one of the great hoaxes. I mean, there were others, like the election itself, as you know, as you covered better than anyone. But it was a rigged election and a horrible thing that took place in 2020.
Bro, the question was, you said within the first 2 minutes, you'd be able to get a read and a vibe on what it is this guy's about. Donald Trump continued on to go, always had a great relationship with him. Was that the vibe? Because you said you always did. What happened in that meeting when you said immediately you'd find out within 2 minutes? Did the first 2 minutes reveal that Vladimir Putin knows about you being on the Epstein list? Did the first 2 minutes reveal that he knows the disgusting things you did with children? I'm just curious. Maybe that was the vibe that he didn't want to talk about. That's why he dodged and then went on to talk about how we could have done a lot together. We could have done so much together. We're best friends. Did I tell you that Vladimir Putin likes me? We're best friends, bro. Did you know they have 11? It's a really big country. They have so much like rare earth minerals. It's so nice. Like I've dreamt of going there many times. They have 11 time zones. This damn place is big as shit. Can you believe that, bro? But you know what? We had to deal with these Russia, and then the Russia, and then the Russia. If enough stupid people are listening to you repeat the same country 3 times, and that means suddenly everything that was obviously discovered about what it is that happened is suddenly null and void, they deserve to be destroyed by you. But the problem is we're all dealing with your dumb ass. By the way, he wasn't even done. This sumbitch was still talking. I just cut it in half. Here's the second half of him still not answering that same question.
But we would have had a great relationship, but we did amazingly well considering, he would look and see what happened. He would think we're crazy, with the made up Russia hoax. So we had something very important, and we had a very good meeting today, but we'll see. I mean, it's, you have to get a deal. We agreed on a lot of points. I want to see people stop dying in Ukraine, and that's what's happening. We're losing 5, 6, 7,000. They're Russians, mostly Russians, and they're Ukrainian soldiers. There's some people dying in cities and towns where they're trying to blow up missile manufacturers and other things in some cities. I don't know if you know what's going on there, but there are a lot of people dying. And if we can end that war, it would be very good. And I was very happy to hear him say, if I was president, that war would have never happened.
If we could, if only someone would end that war, it'd be very good. But the one thing I'm happy about is that he said it never would have started if I was president, because that's all he cares about. And do you think Vladimir Putin, who's continuing to roll through and do whatever the hell he wants under this guy's nose, is not going to tell him, yo, hey, Donnie, bro, if you were president, I never would have done any of this stuff, man, because I'm afraid of you, man. Man, you're so scary. I wouldn't have done anything if only you were president. Matter of fact, I wish you were permanent president. Don't forget what Kamala Harris said about what Vladimir Putin would do to him.
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelenskyy and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
And after you rewatch that, think about what he's doing to Donald Trump and ask yourself, was she right? Sean Hannity sat there in front of him and listened to those stupid ass answers and decided to regurgitate them instead of having a brain and going, that none of that made any sense. So he after that interview, after everyone else heard those parts of that interview, he said this.
A couple of things really stand out to me. Vladimir Putin saying to the world, this war never would have happened had Donald Trump been president. Donald Trump, scale of 1 to 10, gives it a 10. I took a lot away from this interview.
But Sean Hannity, he was impressed. 10 out of 10. The objective was to go in and have a ceasefire. They came out without a ceasefire, didn't answer any questions, walked out with his head down, looked scared and ashen, and then got their faces stepped on. But 10 out of 10 results for this. These are mediocre people getting propped up by other mediocre people for the sake of showing us some false realities about what we're seeing in front of our faces. How was that a 10 out of 10 meeting? How was it a 10 out of 10 meeting when he walked in and sat in front of your face and said, Sean, I agreed to do this interview, and because you kiss my ass every day, I'm going to do it, but got to be honest with you, bro, I don't have very many good things to say, so I wish I didn't. 10 out of 10. It's a 10 out of 10, though. Great job. Are we ready to stop following these idiots yet? Are enough people ready to stop following these idiots yet? This is that lie about whether or not Vladimir Putin told Donald Trump that he thinks he won the 2020 election. He really wishes he was there. This is what Sean Hannity believed.
Vladimir Putin said something, one of the most interesting things. He said, your election was rigged because you have mail-in voting. He said mail-in voting, every election. He said no country has mail-in voting. It's impossible to have mail-in voting and have honest elections. And he said that to me. It was very interesting because we talked about 2020. He said, you won that election by so much. And that's how he got it. He said, and if you would have won, we wouldn't have had a war. You'd have all these millions of people alive now instead of dead. And he said, and you lost it because of mail-in voting. It was a rigged election.
Does any of that make any sense to anybody? You know what? Let's give it to him. Putin told Donald Trump, you won that 2020 election. I wish you were in office. So I, not go into Ukraine like I wanted to. Because the reason I went in Ukraine is because you were not in office. Can you tell us why? Because, you win. And now that he's not agreeing to any ceasefires or any kind of deals or stopping it all, that Donald Trump is in office right now, why doesn't he stop? Since all that is the presence of Donald Trump being nearby for him to not do the things that he's doing. Why not? When is Sean Hannity going to ask him that question? So why didn't he stop now? The second you were elected, why didn't he go, oh, Trump is back? I think I'm going to stop now. Or did you guys walk out ashen and afraid and eyes wide open from the things that they showed and told you? I'm just asking the questions that no one else apparently will ask this dum-dum. But the one thing he wants you guys to know that Vladimir Putin also told you was that the reasons why he was cheated out of that election in 2020 that would have kept Vladimir Putin from running up into Ukraine, the reason why is because of those stupid, illegal mail-in ballots. I feel like that's the whole point of this whole thing. Matter of fact, I know it because after that, this guy used that declaration from Vladimir Putin and tweeted all this out. I'm sorry, Truth Socialed this dumb shit out. I'm gonna lead a movement to get rid of all mail-in ballots. And also, while we're at it, highly inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voting machines, which will cost 10 times more than accurate and sophisticated watermark paper, which is faster and leaves no doubt at the end of the evening as to who won and who lost the election. We're now the only country in the world that uses mail-in voting. All others gave it up because of the massive voter fraud encountered. We will begin this effort, which will be strongly opposed by the Democrats because they cheat at levels never seen before, by signing an executive order to help bring honesty to the 2026 midterm elections. Pause for a second. To bring some honesty to the 2026 midterm elections. Right in time for an election that's going to whoop his ass. He needs to take over control and get rid of those ways of voting. More. He has a lot more to say. Remember, he says, the states are merely an agent. This is where he's talking about his dictatorial decree to take over state-run elections. Remember, the states are merely an agent for the federal government in counting and tabulating the votes. They must do what the federal government, as represented by the President of the United States, tells them for the good of the country to do. With their horrible radical left policies like open borders, men playing in women's sports, transgender and woke for everyone, and so much more, Democrats are virtually unelectable without using this completely disproven mail-in scam. Elections can never be honest with mail-in ballots and voting. And everybody, in particular, the Democrats, knows this. I and the Republican Party will fight like hell to bring honesty and integrity back to our elections. The mail-in ballot hoax using voting machines that are a complete and total disaster must end now. Remember, without fair and honest elections and strong and powerful borders, you don't even have a semblance of a country. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I'm the dictator of this country. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. As a matter of fact, I'm about to get my ass kicked in these upcoming elections. It's over a year from now. But still, I'm setting up the stage right now to try and take over these election systems in states because he says the president of the United States should have control over them. And the basis for that is because Vladimir Putin told you that mail-in voting is fraudulent, and that's the only reason why you got your ass kicked in 2020. There's this woman named Fiona Hill. She's a former deputy assistant to Biden. And she had something to say about that declaration about mail-in voting. You know, that bullshit that he just said.
Putin wants to sow chaos in the American electoral system ahead of the midterms. So, of course, he's laid into this whole issue of mail-in voting. And President Trump asserted in his Fox News interview that there are no countries in the world that allow mail-in voting. Well, Russia allows mail-in voting. And if everybody wants to go out and look, they can look for themselves. In 2020, President Vladimir Putin signed into law Russians being able to vote by mail and also on the internet. And more than 30 other countries also allow some forms of mail-in voting. So it's just not true that other countries, including Russia, don't use this. It's a pure, blatant piece of manipulation.
Wow. But Vladimir Putin told him that mail-in voting was the end of his, was what did him in. Except he allows it in his country. Now, yeah, it was in 2020 during the pandemic and all those things happened. By the way, there's multiple other countries that allow mail-in voting, many times from citizens that live abroad. But, you know, it's so fraudulent. It's almost like everything he does is to gain more power and control over your life. And he lies about it blatantly and obviously every time. But you're supposed to keep believing him.